Welcome to SuperTalk Outdoors from Back Bay of Biloxi in the Foundation Studio. I want to welcome you here. And as you well know by now, this is where we celebrate the outdoors every single Monday at lunchtime, the world-class outdoors of the state of Mississippi. I want to thank you for listening on the powerful SuperTalk Mississippi network. You may be watching us at SuperTalk TV at C-Spire TV, but there's a chance you're listening on Facebook or YouTube or your favorite podcast. And as a result of that, I just want you to know it's May the 16th, 2022. We finally got an opportunity to go offshore this past weekend. It was a great trip. We are so lucky to live in coastal Mississippi, to have access to coastal Mississippi with some of the best offshore fishing, some of the best fishing in general in the world right here in coastal Mississippi. I'll be posting some pictures from this past weekend on the SuperTalk Outdoors Facebook page and some videos as well. I want to encourage you to go like that page. A growing number of people are doing that. It's a great way to go see the show if you miss it on the radio. And we also post some other online and outdoors content there. So, it's a good one. So go like our page, SuperTalk Outdoors at Facebook. We've got a great show today. We're going to be spending the second half of the show with Major Megan Fedrick. Excuse me. She's the first woman major in the history of the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. We're going to talk about her responsibilities, which are vast across the state. We're going to talk a little bit about boater safety and some of the importance of hunter and boater education programs. A number of youth that are involved in the outdoors. It's just incredible the work that they're doing. So look forward to talking to Megan in the second half of the show. And I've got a real treat for the first part of the show. I mentioned youth who are involved in the outdoors. I talk about it all the time, that most of us get our love of the outdoors from our fathers and mothers and maybe our grandparents, or maybe someone close to our family has introduced us to the outdoors at a young age. But, a family that hunts and fishes together usually stays together. Or maybe we can even broaden it to say that a family that enjoys the outdoors together stays together. Anyway, it's wonderful to see the number of young people who are involved. Megan and I will talk about in the second half the number of young people who are involved in their youth Scholastic shooting program. And anyway, it's just awesome to see so many young people being involved. I mean, the reality is that we need to have more people involved, because if you look at the national numbers on the number of young people who are involved in hunting, the numbers have actually fallen on a nationwide basis. So that certainly doesn't apply to our next guest. I want to invite my friend Lauren Head into the conversation. She's a 20-year-old from Canton, and she attends the University of Mississippi, Ole Miss. She's going to be a junior coming up this fall. But anyway, before we go any further, let me just welcome to SuperTalk Outdoors, Lauren. How are you?
Hey, I'm good. How are you, Ricky?
It's good to see you. Now, look, the radio audience can't see your background, but you're obviously, I guess, on a screen porch somewhere in the country on the outskirts of Canton. Describe where you are right now.
Where you said, I'm at my house in Canton. I have a lake behind me. You can't see it, but
yeah.
If my connection bugs out, that's the country's fault, not mine.
That's great. We were introduced to you through Roy Ruiz. Excuse me. People know Troy really well through his work with the Primos team. And once I got to studying you, I was so impressed. I mean, you've been involved in deer hunting and turkey hunting, and you went to Colorado and killed an elk. You went pheasant hunting recently. You like to fish at Ross Barnett from a kayak. You've got a great story to tell, and I want to tell your story. And you had actually really good hunting season. You just passed. With your boyfriend Tyler, I think you posted you had a kind of a double whatever. You killed a hog and a turkey in the same weekend. There are very few girls that take their boyfriends hunting and are the ones who lead the hunt, who call in the turkey and do whatever. You're sort of in rare company, don't you?
Yes, sir, I do. But I enjoy every bit of it. I enjoy it.
So you got your love of hunting from your dad, Chuck. Tell me about when was the first time he took you out in the outdoors?
Oh, ever since I was a little girl, I mean, it's everything I grew up. This is all I know. And I remember one of my first hunts, my dad was turkey hunting, funny enough, and apparently it was a good hunt. And I was sitting there, I was like 4 years old, okay? And we were sitting at the top of a hill, and turkeys were gobbling from all directions, okay? And apparently my dad saw the turkey coming towards us, and he kept on gobbling, and it was like shaking the trees and all that, and I was scared. And so I told my dad, I said, Dad, let's go. Turkey hunting scares me. And I yelled it. So, you know, it takes a pretty incredible dad to walk. Well, he didn't really have any choice if I yelled it, but to walk away and to choose to take me again. So
that's so sweet. That's so sweet. I mean, you know, it wasn't a harbinger of what was to come. In other words, you weren't too scared, because as he continued to take you, you started to really appreciate when you get out in the woods and you get quiet, amazing things start to happen, don't they?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I just love taking in nature in itself. It's not about the killing. It's just about getting in the outdoors. And my dad taught me everything I knew, and I wouldn't trade him for anything.
So talk about that for a minute. And I say that all the time as well, that if you get the opportunity to shoot a turkey, that's great. But it's I love the way that Will Primos talks about it. He says that it's almost like a religious experience. And while he gets that at church, that when he's hunting turkey, when he's in the woods with turkey, whether he shoots or not, he feels like he's actually in a prayer. You know, it's just a kind of a divine experience. I feel the same way. I mean, when I'm out and you get quiet, whether you're deer hunting or turkey hunting or whatever, even when I'm offshore, there's something amazing about when you get to see nature in its undisturbed, you know, the realism of it. It's incredible, isn't it?
Yes, sir. I do a lot of my praying outside, and I think about like if you look around, how could you not believe in a creator who created all of this? You know?
Yeah. Yeah, you mentioned. Listen, we talked a little bit about this before we started the show, but your mother passed away about a year ago. God bless her, and you and your family from cancer. But you mentioned that she was, that she wasn't an outdoorsman. So your dad was kind of taking her girly girl out into the woods, and she didn't always like it, I guess, huh?
Yeah, yes, sir. I remember a story my mom told me. My dad, we have the place where we hunt at. There's a creek, and my dad set up a little hunting blind for her, and she just liked to take pictures, you know. And so while my dad was hunting, my mom was just off somewhere else just taking pictures, and this hog comes out, and she was scared by it, and my dad came and picked her up after the hunt, and my mom was like, "Oh, Chuck, there was a bear." There was a bear. She was so scared. But no, that is setting at all.
So as you know, Lauren, it could have been a bear at some point, because the bear population in Mississippi has really increased. But there are a lot of hogs, man. We've got some management work to do, don't we?
Sure are.
So okay, so you continued on going with your dad. Tell me about the first experience you had to actually hold a gun and aim it at a turkey, and what did that do for you?
Oh my gosh, such an adrenaline rush. I remember my dad was working the bird, and I was just shaking, you know, that adrenaline. And I still get that when I was calling the bird for my boyfriend. I was shaking, but it's just about working the bird, and I mean that's the fun part. And there's so many instances I can't really remember what happened, but I've taken to it.
Yeah, I know you have. So in the second half, we'll talk a little bit more about taking Tyler, your boyfriend, hunting, and the approach that you use. I like the way you talk about it, that you like to go in and be super quiet, and you wait for the woods to wake up, and we'll come back to that in the second part of the show. But tell me about going out to Colorado on your senior trip and getting an elk.
Well, My dad, he kind of surprised me with it.
It's SuperTalk Outdoors with Ricky Matthews on SuperTalk Mississippi.
Welcome back to SuperTalk Outdoors. I'm having an incredible conversation with Lauren Head. She's 20 years old from Canton. She goes to Ole Miss, and she was taught at a very young age to love the outdoors. Her dad, Chuck, just taught her to love the outdoors. And I love the story of going out and having turkeys all around you, one gobbling, and you saying, "Dad, let's get out of the woods." You're scared. But like I said, that wasn't a sign of what was to come, because you would find yourself in a situation where you not only loved it, but were really good at it. Hey, we were talking about hunting in Colorado for your first elk. I haven't done an elk hunt myself, but I've been all over that country. One of the things we did when my kids were younger is took them to a different national park every year. So we've been all over Rockies and Glacier National Park and literally all over that part of the country. So we've seen all the elk in the wild and moose, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But and you mentioned the landscapes. I mean, and we've hiked all through those areas, but that's tough hunting, isn't it?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I found out that while you're walking up the mountain, it's hard to breathe. And we had a guide with us at one point, and he was going so fast, I could not keep up. I was like, hold up, y'all, I gotta breathe.
So when you shot your first elk, and you mentioned that when you walked up to it, they are huge, aren't they?
I really did not realize that they were that big. It still blows my mind. I have them mounted up in my room. I do. I got the antlers. They're very pretty. They're very beautiful animals.
Yeah, that is so cool. And along the way, you sort of, you took up fishing as well. So I mean, really, at the end of the day, Lauren, you're just someone who loves the outdoors and can't get enough of it.
Oh yeah, if I stay inside too long, I go stir crazy. I really do.
Go ahead.
I said I have to be doing something outside, whatever it is.
I'm kind of the same way, man. It's been like that my whole life. It's a thing I always say keeps me young, for sure. So when you started dating Tyler, was he an outdoorsman?
No, sir.
But it's interesting. I say this all the time. People get it if they don't get it sort of from a family tree. It's just not in their DNA. Then they'll meet somebody, and it will that will help them fall in love with it. It certainly happened to him, didn't it?
I guess so. I mean, when I took him turkey hunting, I'm surprised I didn't scare him off by how bossy I was throughout the hunt.
So let's take people through that hunt. You have a unique approach. You like to stay very quiet and let nature sort of do its work. Talk about that a little bit.
Yes, sir. Well, to start off with, I've been turkey hunting on my own, on and off, for the past 3 years. And this year I told my dad, I said, Dad, I'm breaking up with you. I'm going off on my own, And so at the same time, I was like, well, I kind of want to take my boyfriend, because he had only been a couple times. And so I wanted to see if I could call up a turkey for him. So the way I go by it is I let the woods wake up on its own. I let the owls do the work for me. If I get some shot gobbles, great. I know where they are. Plus, if I carry that owl call in my vest, it's just too bulky, it weighs me down. So I just let the woods do the work for me. Well, that particular morning, me and my boyfriend get there before daylight, and we're waiting, and it's complete silence. And I'm like, oh no, it's gonna be one of those type of mornings. So I just told him, I said, you know what? Let's just go set up somewhere. And so we do. And I do what the woods tell me what I need to do, saying if there aren't many turkeys, sounding off, well, I'm going to stay quiet. I don't want to sound desperate, So I was doing my box call, little tree talking every 20 to 30 minutes, and nothing. And we did that for about an hour and a half to 2 hours in complete silence. So I just did that. I was like, hey, I'm here. Come get me if you want me. Come get some. I'm an option. But complete nothing. And so probably around 7:45 or 8, I hit my box call. Turkey sounding off to the right. I'm like, okay, we might be getting into a little something, And so I hit my box call again. Turkey responds to me, and I was like, okay. So I go silent again. I'm like, I ain't gonna give him too much. And so my boyfriend was kind of telling me, at one point he was like, well, hit your box call. I said, trust me, trust me. I'm gonna let him come to me. And so I stay silent for another 20 to 30 minutes, and I hit my box call again. He sounds off, but he changes location. And I know the layout of the road, and there's a logging road that I figured he might be trying to head to. And so, I hit it. He sounds off. I go quiet again. All right. So we wait. Well, I didn't touch my call at all. He gobbled. And when he gobbled, he was right there. Like the tree shook again. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, like I start shaking. And I was eyeballing my boyfriend, and he hadn't moved. And I was like, get your gun up. Like, he is right there. I said, bottom line, when you see him, he can see you. Do not move. And so he gets his gun up. I kind of moved my gun in that same direction just in case two were going to come up. He'd take left, I'd take right. We tag team them. I put my box call down because I'm like, all right, this bird is coming. We're set. We're good. We're good to go. He's going to kill a bird. And so a little bit goes by, and my boyfriend says, I see him. And he saw some movement in the wood line right before the field starts. And I was like, oh, yeah, I see him. He was strutting back and forth, drumming, spitting, all that jazz. And so he does that for probably a good 10 minutes. And I'm telling Tyler, I'm like, be ready. Just be ready. Like, I can see him. Just stay ready. Well, my box call is on the ground beside me, okay? I hear a hen start sounding off. I'm like, oh, goodness. Nope, I didn't do all this work for nothing. She ain't about to ruin this. No, thank you. And so I have to slowly get my box call while I'm watching the turkey strut back and forth. So I successfully get it while trying to balance my gun on my knee at the same time. And so the hen starts up. I cut her off. All right. Well, I start up, and she cuts me off. And I'm like, no, ma'am, not today. And so we go back and forth, and all at the same time, that turkey's probably just in, heaven. He's like, oh, I got two ladies with me, I got it made. And so me and the hen, we're cutting each other off, and that turkey's gobbling and all that. And finally, I'm able to get him away from his little girlfriend. And so I see him, I literally watch him tuck his wings, and he full on sprinted to us right in Tyler's sights. And it was a perfect shot. You could have not asked for a more perfect setup. And then, that was it. That was it.
You're a great storyteller.
Oh, really?
I could picture every aspect of what you were talking about. Where did you learn that patience? See, a lot of people overcall. Same thing for ducks; they want to overcall. Where'd you learn that patience?
Lots of years of observing my dad, and then eventually going off on my own, because I really did. I started out, trying to force it to happen. You cannot force it to happen. You have to let it happen. You have to listen to what the woods are doing, and then you know what to do. And I still have a lot to learn. I don't claim everything. I don't claim to know everything.
Well, you say that, but the experience really shows. I mean, the whole notion of cutting off the hen that was distracting the situation. And you know what's interesting about that is you won in a sort of a showdown with a live hen that wanted to bring that turkey toward her, and you weren't going to let that happen, were you?
No, sir. But I bet that turkey wished he went to her, I bet that turkey wishes he didn't cheat on his little girlfriend.
That is so funny. Hey, I meant to ask you, what are you getting a degree in at Ole Miss?
Allied health, nursing.
Really? Good for you. Good for you. That's exciting that you're going to do that. And you went on to get a hog that weekend. Unfortunately, we're out of time. But you know what? I'm going to have you back in the next couple of months, and we're going to just kind of continue the conversation. It is so awesome to have someone like you, young woman who's involved in the outdoors, who's such a great storyteller, so passionate about what she's doing. And it's a real inspiration. So thank you for joining me.
Yes, sir. Thank you for having me. This was so fun.
It was fun, no doubt about it. Hey, when we come back, we'll have Major Megan Fedrick from the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries and Parks. We'll see you after this break.
I'm safe.
Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I really enjoyed that conversation with Lauren Head. It's great to see young people engage in the outdoors, and every opportunity I get, I'm going to bring one of those terrific personalities into the fold here on Super Talk Outdoors and hear their story. Where did they get their passion from the outdoors from? And in Lauren's case, it's just a fun conversation. I really enjoyed that. So now let's shift gears. We're going to move over to my friend Major Megan Fedrick. She's been on the show before. We're going to learn more about what she does. We're going to talk about boater safety. There's a lot to talk about, but before we go any further, let me just welcome her back to Super Talk Outdoors. How you doing, Megan?
Hey, doing good. Thanks for having me.
It's good to have you. You've been with the agency for 23 years, and since the last time we talked, you've become a major, the first woman, a history-making move by the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. How does it feel to make history?
That's what they tell me. I guess it's good. I'm definitely busy, so plenty goes along with that new rank. So they keep me busy. Everything's good. I think everything's running smoothly. So I'm happy to be in that spot. I don't know that I feel any different, but glad to be there.
Well, that's great. It's really, really good, and I congratulate you for your advancement there in the organization. And I'm not surprised about it all. But when we talked before, you already had a ton of responsibility in hunter education and boater safety, shooting ranges, youth programs, etc. How has your new role changed sort of your span of control, what you have responsibilities for?
I definitely tell everybody that my plate is full, but saying that, well, I'm very grateful because since the beginning of the year, I now have a full staff, and I have a great staff of officers and civilians. So I have officers that help me with the enforcement side and the investigation side for boating and hunter ed, especially when it comes to hunting incidents or boating accidents throughout the state. So I'm lucky to have these guys that are spread throughout the state to take care of those issues. And then we have our staff at our shooting ranges, and they have some great managers to run those ranges. So I know that when something needs to be done, that it's going to be taken care of. And then we've just gotten a new person, Gary Halcomb, over our Mississippi Scholastic Shooting Sports Program. So Gary has hit the ground running, and he's making sure that everything needs to be done. We just finished a regional tournament where our shooters competed against South Carolina up at our MacGyver range in North Mississippi, and they'll start now working on the new teams that are coming along in the shooting sports program for next fall. And we're actually doing construction on our McHenry range in South Mississippi, and hope to have that sporting clays trail open here this summer, which should make an explosion of shooting sports in the south part of the state this year.
I mean, it is true. And then describe it for me, if you will, so for people who have not had this on their radar screen. Certainly, we've talked about it here on SuperTalk Outdoors before, but the shooting facilities that we have access to now that have evolved are world-class facilities across this state, aren't they?
I think they are. MacGyver is our newest one, but McHenry is going to rival it here soon with the new sporting clay trail. Turcotte is our oldest facility, but our most used because of the location of where it is. But if you were to walk up on, say, MacGyver, you'd have no idea you were in Mississippi. You could be, it's as beautiful as any range you would see in any state that you think of that is maybe in a higher class level than Mississippi. But state of the art, we were happy to host like the tournament this past weekend with other states and have them bring their youth in to shoot. Everything they need is there. So I cannot complain. And I can't take credit for them. They were handed to me later, but beautiful facilities.
Megan, what's interesting to me is when you study the department's role in educating young people and involving them in shooting sports, it's unbelievable the number of kids that are involved in shooting programs across this state. I mean, that is a terrific evolution, isn't it?
I am very excited with the numbers. We have almost 1,100 kids signed up in the Scholastic Shooting Sports Program. It started out 6 or 7 years ago with like 40 kids. It's been a long road. Michelle, that's with our foundation, did a lot of work on that and trying to just get your foot in the door, because when you mention firearms, people get nervous. But this is a very safe sport. It teaches all kinds of different life skills, especially responsibility and safety. And once we got our foot into the doors of the public schools, it's really started to grow. We feel like since we have so many teams in the north and central part of the state, that once this trail opens in South Mississippi, that we probably won't have to promote it very much, that it's just going to pick up really fast through word of mouth.
Michelle, you say, people worry about kids being around firearms, but the key is really at the end of the day, teaching them to respect the firearm and understanding about safety. And, I tell you, as it relates to my kids, I'll just share something with you. And I think this sort of perpetuates itself through all the children who go through these education programs. And as this, whether it's shooting a bow or whether it's shooting a rifle when we're hunting and learning how to handle that rifle properly, or whether it's offshore, say we're 100 miles offshore, I said to them almost before they could even walk that when we're doing these things, you don't get a second chance. You have to get it right the first time, and you got to learn to use it properly. And what it's done for my sons and my daughter as well, what it's done for them is teach them that safety is the name of the game, and they are as good around firearms or good around things that might otherwise hurt them as it relates to the outdoors as anybody. And it helps them actually become more responsible adults. You see that as well, don't you?
I agree. My little boy will tell you, safety first, safety always. He has been drilled into his head for years now. And it may seem silly, like if we tell him not to do something, why it's important to listen is because we say, well, if mommy and daddy are in the woods with you and we tell you not to do something, it's for a reason. There could be a venomous snake. There could be a dangerous situation. It's very important to learn how important safety is in each role of daily life, especially when it comes to outdoor recreation. But hopefully having some of the classes that we offer, having this shooting sports program, that we are able to instill that responsibility into those kids at an early age.
Hey, when you were a captain, did you also at that time have responsibilities for investigating hunting and boating accidents? That was always sort of part of it. That was
always a part of it. So I had Hunter Ed initially, and then kind of gradually took over the boating program probably in early 21 somewhere. So I had it about a year before I moved up to major. And then now I've got the ranges and the shooting sports, although I was always part of shooting sports, helping out with that program anyway. So I was very familiar with it and how it worked.
Well, you know what's interesting to me, it's more than interesting, I guess it's actually important that when you're involved in sort of the forensic breakdown of a hunting accident or I mean, if you do a search on boating accidents in Mississippi, the good news is we don't have a lot of them, but one is too many.
Correct.
And often they're tragic when it happens. But the bottom line is, though, when you have the opportunity to sort of break it all down and be involved in a full-scale investigation, it helps you create a more compelling case for action for why the safety side is so important. And it's heartbreaking, but it's also, just an incredible reminder of why what you do in terms of the training programs, the education classes, is so important.
About to put me on my soapbox. What I always think about when I think about us having different boating issues or boating accidents is that some reason in people's minds, a boat is not like a car to them. It is completely a recreational thing that, hey, anyone can do it. I can do it. You can do it. A little kid can do it. We don't need the training. We don't need to think about how important it is to follow basically the rules of the road or the boating laws on water. I mean, you pass on the right. There's things you do when it comes to boating that people have no idea. We have folks out there that'll be grandfathered in because of their age that aren't required to take an education course, but an education course could be beneficial to everyone that operates a boat in Mississippi. They also think, well, we drink, we boat, it's just a fun weekend, but that's also where we get into situations as well, is that you need a designated driver, whether you're in a car or a boat. And it just seems like those two are never comparable in people's minds.
It is tragic, and usually when you do an assessment of an accident, certainly after living here for most of since I was 4, I've been on the Mississippi Gulf Coast. The accidents that occur are usually associated with, number one, someone was under the influence or distracted in some way. Or the other, they just weren't well trained. They made a decision to go to Horn Island when the conditions were terrible, and
right.
They should have never been offshore. But I mean, it's again, there's a lot more to think about on the boat than when you're in a car. that's the reality, and the kind of boat that you're in, and whether it can weather that particular situation or not is really, really important. Hey, when we come back, we're going to talk a little bit more about sort of what's the name of the game this time of year as they focus on education, especially boater safety. We're having a conversation with Megan Fedrick. She's a first woman major for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks. She has a ton of responsibility, and I enjoy visiting with her here on Super Talk Outdoors. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to Super Talk Outdoors. I have Major Megan Fedrick with me today. She's the Director of Hunter Education and Boating Safety, but she has so much more responsibility than that. The Mississippi Scholastic shooting program is very significant. As we just talked about at the beginning of the show, the shooting facilities we have across the state are literally world-class. People I talk to who love the outdoors, who frequent those various shooting ranges, man, they could not sing their praises enough. It's truly remarkable what this state has done, and the leadership of the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks is sort of at the core of that. So Megan, this is the final segment. We've got about 6 minutes and 50 seconds, so I want to make sure we hit some of the most important points. But we were talking about boater safety when we went to the break. You guys really spend a lot of time focusing on that, don't you?
We do. We offer classes throughout the state, mostly in the spring and early summer. And then we also have an online course that is available for those that can't make it to a class. Now, all of those courses, whether it's in person or online, are certified by NASBLA, which is the governing body that determines what standards we need to meet in teaching boating education.
That's great. So Okay, so what age group is the critical age group? I hate to actually even talk about age, because the reality is everyone needs to go through boater safety.
And it's the same thing with Hunter Ed. That's what I tell people. Yeah. You may have missed the cutoff, but it will not hurt you to take the class. It won't hurt anybody
what's
to
the
be
cutoff?
educated. So all right, anyone born after June 30th, 1980 has to have a boater education class to operate a boat in Mississippi. It doesn't matter if you were grandfathered in your state that you came from and you were going to be in Mississippi for the weekend. You are not grandfathered in here if you were born after that date. You need to have a boater ed class. We will certify age 10 and above in our courses, because we believe you need to be at least 10 to be able to comprehend the information and take the test. But like I said, if you were born before that date and you just go out and buy a boat and you've never operated a boat and you don't know what to do with that boat, take the online course at least to do something to give you some ideas of how to operate a boat on the water. Like I said, it's not, you just don't buy it and you pull out a piece of paper and it says, do this, do this, do this, and you automatically are a boat operator. It takes time, it takes practice, and there's some things that you need to know before you get in that boat. I luckily grew up on a lake, so it's kind of instilled in me from an early age, but a lot of people will say, hey, let's buy a boat, let's go on the reservoir. And then there they go.
Megan, I live on the water here in Biloxi Back Bay, so I've really been able to see over many years sort of, what's popular, what's not popular. But the one thing that really scares me to death is the personal watercrafts. When our kids are younger, we had a couple of Sea-Doos, and they would go 55 miles an hour. But I regularly see Sea-Doos, groups of Sea-Doos going by my house, 65, 70 miles an hour. Man, that scares me to death.
I agree. And there's a lot of people, homeowners, that don't want the wake up on their piers or in different areas. And I know it depends on where you are. There could be a no wake zone, which could be favorable or helpful. It just depends. But like I said, it's just viewed differently than a car on the road. So they feel like they're in the water, so they're safe. They can play, they can do whatever they want. But it would be nice to know that we've at least had a chance to sit them down in a class or give them a course so they can understand the ramifications when things don't go the way that they planned.
I bet, I think about this, but it's actually a miracle we don't see more accidents with personal watercraft. I mean, just given how young some of the people are who are operating them, how fast they go, going into places where there's a lot of heavy traffic and whatever. I mean, sometimes I see kids, teenagers, out at Horn Island on a personal watercraft. I mean, it's really kind of scary, actually.
That is quite the distance. And of course, your whole world down there is a little bit different. I've worked landlocked my whole life, so I don't see the big stuff that goes on the coast unless I'm going over, incident reports. But I do understand that. And as long as they're 12 and over and have boater ed, they can operate a boat in Mississippi. I was also wanted to put the responsibility into the parents' hands and say, if you think your child, teenager, is not responsible enough, then, maybe you hold back on letting them do something until you feel that they have that level of responsibility. But, just so that we don't miss anything today, I do want folks to know that you have to have a life jacket on to operate that personal watercraft. And you have to have a life jacket on board for every person own a boat in Mississippi. And especially if that boat's underway and that child is under 13, they have to have that life jacket on while the boat is moving.
That can't not be more important. We don't have much time left, but on the boater operators checklist, and well, actually, you know what we're going to do, Megan? I'm going to have you back in a couple of weeks, and we're going to continue the conversation. I'd like to really break it all down on the safety checklist for boaters. And there are other things we can talk about as well. But
I would love to talk about boat registration, Ricky.
Yeah, for sure.
When not to buy a boat. I would love to talk about that.
For sure. Anyway, hey, Megan, it's been great to catch up with you. Have a great weekend.
Thank you so much.
Have a great week. Excuse me. Have a great week.
Y'all too.
We will see you next Monday. And as I always like to end the show, stay safe. Really what the second half of the show was all about. Stay safe when you're in the outdoors, and have a great week.